Okay, we are ready for lesson 1.3, solving literal equations. So a literal equation is something that has more than one variable usually, and it will tell you which variable you want to solve for. One of the most important literal equations that we solve for is something that has an x and y, usually because we want to put it in slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b. It's easier to graph, but it's also easier if you have a table. Because if you started with this, negative 3 plus y, or negative 3x plus y equals 4, and you wanted to make a table of x and y, and you were going to substitute in 1 and 2, if you did that in this equation, then you would have to solve for y every single time. But if you solved the equation for y first, then you could substitute in those numbers, and it would be a lot easier to just put that in your calculator. So let's look at this example here. We are given d equals 4.5 times t. Now we want to find t. T is what we're looking for. So if we solve this for t, then all we have to do is substitute in the d. So d is, right here, d is 1. So 1 over 4.5 equals t. So t is 0.22. Or 2 over 4.5 equals t. So t is equal to 0.44. Or 3 over 4.5 equals t. So t is equal to 0.67. So instead of having to solve for t every single time, I could just plug the numbers into my calculator and go. So solving literal equations is important. So let's look at some one step. The first thing that you want to do is you want to identify the variable that you're solving for. This one says solve for r. So I'm going to put a box around r. Then I have to look and say, how are these related? R times t, so to undo multiply, you divide by t. T over t becomes invisible 1. So d over t equals r. And you can reverse that and say r equals d over t. This one says solve for h. So here's my h. And we need to look and see what's attached to h. Attached to h is L and W. L times W times h. So we can divide by L and W on both sides. L over L becomes invisible 1. W over W becomes invisible 1. And h equals V over LW. Now this last one can be worked as a one-step or a two-step equation. I'm going to work it as a two-step equation, but you could do the same step. We're going to solve for A. But if you look at the relationship, we have plus B and plus C. To get rid of addition, we have to subtract. So we're going to subtract B from both sides. So we have P minus B equals A plus C. So here's my A. I still have plus C. To undo that, you have to subtract C from both sides. P minus B minus C equals A. You are really just rearranging. You're not going to get A equals 12. In this example here, you're not going to get h equals a number. You are really just rearranging the equation so that it looks like something different, something easier to substitute into. So let's try two-step equations. This one says solve for b. So here's b. Now remember, we have to get rid of this division sign because we can't do anything with the b times h because right now it's divided by 2. So to get rid of divided by 2, we multiply by 2. 2 over 2 becomes 1. So 2h equals b, or 2a equals b times h. So we're solving for b. So that was step 1. Now step 2, it's b times h, so divide by h. That becomes invisible 1. 2a over h equals b. That was step 2. This one says solve for w. Here's w. So we actually have to take care of this first, the 2L. Remember, this is invisible plus sign in front of it, so we need to subtract 2L from both sides. So we have P minus 2L equals 2W. Here's my W. Now that's 2 times W divided by 2. So you have, and actually when I divide it by 2, I want to divide the P by 2. I want to divide the negative 2L by 2. So your answer is P over 2 minus 2 over 2 becomes invisible 1 equals W. So remember, there was invisible 1 there, but you don't have to put it if you don't want to. Deleted a whole bunch of stuff with that. Okay, here's another one. This one, solve for y. So this, in my opinion, is the most important type of equation that you need to learn how to solve. Here's y. Remember, we want to get rid of what's farthest from it. So that's invisible plus sign. So you want to subtract 3x from both sides. You can't take 12 minus 3 because that's a 3x. They're not like terms, so you just have to move it to the other side. You don't actually subtract it from the number. So on this side, we're left with negative 4y. On this side, remember, y equals mx plus b. I'm going to put the negative 3x first. Invisible plus sign is in front of that, so plus 12. Here's my y. Negative 4 times y. My screen's lagging a little bit. We'll wait for that to show up. So we want to divide everything by negative 4. So remember how I divided each one individually? I want to do that too on this one. Divide everything by negative 4. So negative 4 for negative 4 is a positive 1, which is invisible. A negative 3 over a negative 4 is a positive 3 over 4x. And a positive 12 divided by a negative 4 is a negative 3. And then you put that in y equals mx plus b, or slope-intercept form, which is why this is important. We like slope-intercept form. It's easier to use when we graph. Okay, we're going to do probably just one more because that last one's a little bit ugly and I don't think we want to try that one today. This one says solve for r. It looks easy. It doesn't look very complicated, but notice this is called a multi-step. So r is in a denominator, and we can't have r in the denominator. So we need to take both sides times r. So that cancels out, but that's okay. Becomes invisible 1. We have r times I equals v. So here's my r. So it's r times I. So now we're going to divide by I. And r equals v over I. Now technically that was only 2 steps, but I stuck that in the multi-step example because that r is kind of tricky. Okay, now this one's super ugly, so we're going to actually save this for another time. But in a few weeks, after we're a little more comfortable with literal equations, I will come back and work this for you so you can see all the steps involved. Homework starts here, or practice, sorry, not homework, practice. Remember, you can practice the odds. The answers are for certain on my website now, so you can go on and you can check all of your work on the website to make sure that you're doing them correctly.